Good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Northside DFA's annual fundraising event, summer of 2020, a different year than a lot of years and a different style of events than the past ones have been, but one that I think is going to be really interesting. It's going to be full of programming and interviews and surprisingly wacky variety show moments and a lot of really great progressive politics. Daniel Biss, I've been an enthusiastic member, supporter, and fan of NDFA since, gosh, I don't know, 2005 maybe. And I'm really excited to be a part of this evening. And I want to turn it over to NDFA Steering Committee member Joe Fedorko.
Thank you. So we are doing a little bit of juggling with some technical issues and some last minute changes in the schedule, but we're happy everybody who is online is online. And like Dan said, we have a lot of doing things slightly different than we have in some other, not just because we're online, but because of some of the things we have up our sleeve. We've got some cool. We asked for some of our candidates and politicians whom we've helped elect over the years to maybe talk about us, which is always nice. And we've got a few of those that we'll see. A lot of us that are on steering committee are going to talk a little bit about it. I'm happy because really for the first time, my theater company DB Comedy prepared a little something for NDFA, and it was kind of a request, so we took it in our own unique direction. And the highlight is a really charming interview with Joe Winebanks, author of The Watergate Girl, frequent guest on Stephanie Miller, and frequent contributor on MSNBC. We're also going to be asking you to look for our lap. We've been doing a silent auction, which is going on until midnight tonight. So we're going to go through all of the items, let you know what the prices are and what the bids are. And again, even in that, we go from the sublime to the ridiculous, and it's so much fun. So thank you for doing it, Dan. Again, this was actually a spot where we were going to have our steering committee chair, Mary Claire Piseni, give a little statement. Do that a little later. So with that in mind, we're going to jump a little bit ahead, and I'm going to ask Jerome, our backstage director, if you can, to show get a little PowerPoint presentation. We're going to do this in stages. So we've got about 24 different, or actually more than 24 different cool items. And so again, to go and bid, and the bidding continues until midnight tonight. It is northsidedfa.com/auction_details. So we just want to go through some of the items that you can bid on now. And we start with something that's actually not a bid, but a premium, an NDFA mask. It is the age of COVID. So for anybody that does a $100 donation, and that's either a straight donation or you win an item on one of the bids, on one of the items in the silent auction, we will get an NDFA mask included in that package. So we hope you can do that. But if you want stuff, we've got stuff. And so we're going to start with 2 baskets. These are, as you can see, we call them socially distanced party gift baskets. And they have everything from bottles of wine to 2 NDFA masks, various munchies donated and gathered by NDFA Steering to help some of our local merchants at the time of COVID. And as you can see, as of this moment, both baskets have an $80 bid online. Dan, if you see something you like, stop and just send an email and we'll get that bid in for you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, this is one of our favorites, inspired by dogs playing poker. As you can see, a watercolor of some, but not quite all, of the Democratic candidates playing poker. Very prescient, as you can see, with Kamala next to Joe Biden. And I think, is that Cory Booker passing a card to Mayor Pete there? Hard to tell. The one way that you can tell is if you wanted to get that picture for yourself. $110 bid right now. Moving on. two items that were graciously donated in the memory of John Lewis. The first is a framed copy of the biographical picture Good Trouble, which was just released, is on streaming. It's a $75 bid. And if you like that, we've got another item that's really amazing. And this is a picture of John Lewis marching with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And as you can see, it has been autographed by the Representative Lewis. $175 bid available for that. And then two donated to our special guest, Jill Banks. This is an autographed copy of her biography, The Watergate Girl, and she's going to talk a lot about that in the interview coming up, and some really amazing stories. I was obsessed with it as a kid. I learned some cool stuff with the interview. You'll learn even more. And as you know, if you've seen her, she is all about her pins. And she donated, next slide, Jerome, not one but two lapel pins from her collection. One of which, as you can see, is a special Joe Biden campaign button. You will be hearing a lot about that in the interview as well. The second, just a basket of popcorn, because honestly, you can't just do all political stuff. Next up, two prints. These are painted, as you can see, state of Illinois, inspired by various flora and fauna. On the left, Illinois Blue Violet, there's an $85 bid for that print. On the right, Illinois Prairie State with a collection of different items, also framed, $75 for those. And the last item of the first batch, again, we know a lot of you guys have Barack Obama collection somewhere on your mantle. It is not complete without some of the opposition. So here, just like the Oscar Goldman box in the 40-year-old version, you have a John McCain call to action figure still in its original box, $25 bid, and we'll stop there. Jerome, you can bring us back. So all of those items and more, again, currently go to northsidedfa.com. Bidding continues until midnight. You were tempted by the John McCain doll, I could tell, Dan.
I was tempted. It is a huge hole in my collection. Actually, I actually have no action figures of major Republican politicians at all in my entire house, which people often comment on as a surprising thing. But you know, that was a good one. I also feel like if anyone wants to ignore anything I'm saying, so as to instead be bidding on the John Lewis autograph poster, that seems like a good reason to ignore me and do something better for the world. That was pretty awesome, pretty inspiring.
All right,
scary loss.
All right, so I'm getting a note that we may be getting Mary Claire soon, but before she comes, and she's actually going to be introducing you, Dan, but that's okay, she can do that anyway, because this is actually the first spot where we have some guests and some video packages for candidates that we've helped. And of course, if you're here, you know what NDFA works to get people elected, but we also work to try to help people learn to get elected. I wonder, give you a chance, Dan, to maybe talk a little bit about your experiences with NDFA and how you first came to us and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Joe. I think back really to the times before I was ever a candidate for any office. You know, it was whatever it was, 2005, I think, maybe even earlier. I don't remember for sure. And, you know, what did we have? We had a dangerous president, Republican Party off the rails. It was urgent to elect Democrats. And also, at least I felt that the Democratic Party needed to be bolder and more progressive than it was at the time. And this organization that was doing all this grassroots work to advance both of those visions of electing Democrats and allowing the party, supporting the party, pushing the party to be more bold and progressive. It just seemed like exactly the place to be. And I think now about where we are in 2020, and it just feels like we're in the same place. But although we're in the same place precisely from the point of view of the need to do that work of electing Democrats and supporting the party's progressive wing, we've also come a long way. There are people in Congress who are bold and progressive in a way that just wasn't happening in the middle of the Iraq War. There's a growing grassroots progressive movement that's been successful in electing people and successful in running candidates and successful in putting issues on the table. Back then, we were terrified every time the Republicans would put a referendum on the ballot. It would defeat civil liberties, defeat civil rights somewhere in the country. Nowadays, we're passing Medicaid expansion in places like Missouri that are really tough territory for Democrats. And so I feel like the urgency of the mission is even greater than it used to be, but the progress is really significant. And so this just feels like a really good time to be celebrating an organization like this. On a personal note, I'll say that I've never run for any office without having NDFA be pretty much my first stop. The first place I go to say, in some cases, I'm thinking about doing this. What do y'all think? Or in other cases, I'm just about to launch this. Will y'all stand with me? Because of the concrete material help that NDFA gives, but also because of what NDFA represents to people across the community, it's never confusing what kind of person you are, what kind of candidate you are, what kind of values you stand with if you're an NDFA endorsed candidate. And I think that good housekeeping seal of approval is just incredibly important in a place like Chicago, where the elections can be so confusing. It can be so hard to really understand who's who and what's on which side. That's a really valuable service that we need to support NDFA's ability to continue providing.
Thank you. Awesome. I think we have someone that would like to enter the show right now. Hey. And we'll unmute if you can be. Let's see if Jerome can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. There we go. Yeah. Oh, you need. Yeah. Do you know? If you look towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see a mic on towards the left-hand side. Yep. Tell you what, Mary Claire, why don't you hold? Because this is actually a chance to, we can figure this out, because we've got a couple of videos that we want to show from a couple other candidates that would like to also talk a little bit about NDFA. So we're going to ask Jerome to play Hallie and Greg. And when we come back, I think we'll have Mary Claire back and more frivolity.
Hi, my name is Hallie Quesada, and NDFA made me feel like a legitimate candidate. As a newcomer to politics, it just matters to have people who've been doing this work believe in you and show up for you and guide you through the process. I can say that every single volunteer from NDFA was kind and funny and competent and consistent, and I'm just so appreciative for everything they did. And just want to take this opportunity to throw in one extra little shout out for Steve, because he was there from the very beginning all the way through the very end, and his support meant so much to me. Thank you.
Northside Democracy for America means to me a commitment to progressive values, energy, and most of all, activism. Now, I have to laugh thinking about the way Frank came out riding 3 trains to Downers Grove to knock doors for me when I ran for the village board, and how so many folks came out to support my run for state representative as well. So to me, the best way that NDFA can continue supporting progressive candidates is by doing just that. Get out, knock doors, make phone calls, and keep that commitment to electing progressives through 2020 and beyond.
All right.
Okay, how does this sound?
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds great. Hey, Mary Claire.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's so good to see you. How are you?
Very good, very good. And it's wonderful to see you as well. I'm sorry for the snafu. I can only say that I have never had a good relationship with AV equipment. So
we are living in a dark time when it comes to AV equipment. There's no question about that.
I know. Well, let me get started. I'm Mary Claire Puseni, and I'm co-chair of Northside Democracy for America. And we believe that we are the largest grassroots political organization in Illinois, and I'm going to welcome everybody to our first online fundraiser and our virtual auction. We have a great evening planned for you, and I hope you stick around. I first found DFA myself after the disastrous 2004 election. I wanted to find a group that worked year-round for political change, not just at presidential election time. I walked into Wing Ho Restaurant and noticed Sandra Vertheen, Cynthia Fox, Nishi Schulenberg. These are all names from the past. And they were talking about MWRD candidates and committeeman races and state reps. And I was hooked. I really didn't know exactly what these people did, but I was going to find out and start working for the best of them. That night, I felt I had found my home. It has been a privilege to work for a great many candidates. Lots of them haven't won. But their campaigns made their opponents and their communities better. And NDFA has been a part of that process. We listen to candidates, challenge their campaigns, vote to endorse them, and work to elect them. Along the way, we have made many friends, and that brings me to my next topic, our special host for the evening. I met him during the 2004 election when he was planning bus trips to Wisconsin on weekends and hosting phone banks during the week for the presidential election. Next, he started showing up at NDFA meetings, and then in 2007 decided to run for state rep. From 2007 on, I've worked in every election he has run in and been proud to do it. Please welcome the host of tonight's program, former state rep, former state senator, juggler extraordinaire, and excellent friend to NDFA, Daniel Biss.
There you go.
And the crowd goes wild.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mary Claire. And I do want to say it really is true that you personally were there every time I ran for anything. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, NDFA was also. And it just mattered. It mattered in the campaigns, it mattered on the ground, and it mattered in my heart as well. And, you know, that it's a political movement is doing what it's supposed to do if it builds real human connections between people that transcend any one particular election. And that's just what NDFA has been in my life. And I just can't tell you how much it means. So yeah, thank you, Mary Claire.
You're more than welcome. It's been my pleasure.
So I think Joe has an update for us on the auction. Is that right, Joe?
I think, well, we did our first round of updates, but it's as good a time as any to remind everybody, again, there are these things called tabs. And so on one tab, you can be watching the entertainment while on the other, checking to see on the Northside DFA website which item you would like to bid on in our online auction, or you can just give us gifts. That's super helpful. We use it to help do things like putting our shows online in this COVID era, where we are reaching out to candidates. We do still, you know, we train candidates, and we'll undoubtedly are going to be trying to do that in the next year or so. We keep up our databases. The money goes to a good cause. And so however you wish to help us out, please do. And in exchange, at the very least, we're going to try to entertain you a little bit, which is a segue into the first straight entertainment bit, which is courtesy of, like I said, my company, which was formerly known as Democracy Burlesque in 2006. And a lot of what, like our history has actually tracked at the same time as NDFA. We changed to DB Comedy so that Facebook would run our ads. And we're actually, literally today just made another transition, which I will talk about at the end of the video that you're about to see. But the video you're about to see was requested because they didn't pay us, therefore it wasn't a commission, snarl, but inspired and suggested to us because, well, let's admit it, one of the folks in our neighborhood is former Governor Rod Blagojevich. And of course, that whole carnival was something a lot of us experienced in different ways. And so in our way, we wanted to pay homage without having to pay a cameo fee. So we would like to present, somewhat proudly, a piece entitled "The Arrogance of These People."
The following dialogue is assembled from transcripts used in the trial of former Governor Rod Blagojevich in conversation with his attorney, Doug Schofield. Segments have been rearranged, but no words have been altered. Date, November 5th, 2008, time 11:06 a.m. Rod Blagojevich, home line, incoming call, session 281.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey. So, Harris gave me this chilling thought. What if we want to put Lisa in as Deputy Attorney General?
Lisa Madigan, daughter of House Speaker Mike Madigan?
Yeah, I don't know what Lisa would take. I mean, they'd have to give her something with significance.
What kind of a fucking ridiculous thing? I mean, send her to the cabinet. Send Mike Madigan to the cabinet. Now, that's a different deal.
Yeah, I'm sure Madigan would love DC.
Cabinet's out of the question, but Health and Human Services would be I take that in a second.
Sure.
That'll never happen. UN ambassador, I take that.
Yeah.
You Russian motherfuckers. Can you see me? All right, anyway, but those are not reachable. But you know, I told my nephew, Alex, he just turned 26 today. I said, Alex, you know, I call him for his birthday and I says, it's just too bad you're not 4 years older because I could have given you a U.S. Senate seat for your birthday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got this thing and it's fucking golden.
Right.
And I'm not just going to give it up for fucking nothing. I'm not going to do it, and I can always use it as a fucking parachute out there. I talked to Fred about that. You know, I was laughing after that if I do it. That's what I'm thinking. Gotta think I can at least be ambassador to Macedonia now.
Sure, there's a lot of interesting countries in the world.
Investigate if other countries are interesting. Date, November 10th, 2008. Time, 11:44 a.m. Rod Blagojevich, home line, outgoing call. Session 458.
And their belief, they say they'll give you nothing because they're assuming that, or they know something.
They assume that.
Yeah, well, I think that's not... I don't know if I assume nothing, but I assume less than what would be...
Of course, we're not... Nothing for confirmation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying, Doug?
I do, but this... We're not talking as part of discussions for anything else.
Well, it's unsaid. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah?
It's unsaid. In other words, however they want to say it. I mean, the point is, well, you know what I'm saying.
Maybe.
Huh?
Maybe.
Date, November 7th, time, 11:06 a.m. Rod Blagojevich, home line, incoming call, session 375.
But you know, what about Patty on some, corporate boards? Paid corporate boards right now. Can they help us out that way?
I think they could.
Yeah, so...
The president-elect. They think he can do most anything he sets his mind to if he wants.
Yeah, Treehouse Foods, the one that what's-her-name was on for 65 grand. Now, can't we get Patty on a couple of those?
I think they could help.
I want you to think about that. I mean, I'll do Valerie Jarrett. I just don't, but if they feel they can do this and not fucking give me anything under just some vague assurances or something, I'll fucking go Jesse Jr. I mean, the arrogance of these fucking people. You know, Patty, you know, a couple of corporate boards, you know, she picks up another 150 grand a year or whatever. Help us through these, you know, while we're having to suck it up here for the next couple of years as governor. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd play it out.
How about a 501c4 so I can advocate children's health care? Can't they get like Warren Buffett and some of those guys to put like 10, 12, 15 million dollars in that? Like right away.
Well, they probably could.
Then I could advocate children's health care. Use that thing as, you know, an advocacy tool. And how do you make a deal like that? I mean, it's got to be legal, obviously, but it's very commonplace, is it not? Doing things like this?
I mean, that kind of 501c4, it's not unusual.
501c4 issue advocacy. 10, 15, 20, $35 million in an organization like that. But can we get going with a board that I'm comfortable with? And then when I'm no longer governor, I go over there. What about that?
I think it's worth exploring.
I bet JB can raise me money like that for a Senate seat, huh?
Yep.
If I can get JB to do something like that, is it worth giving him the Senate seat? Incidentally, he asked me for it. Don't repeat that.
He did?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Man, I don't know. That's a hard one to do.
What's that, JB?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's unsaid. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
Say what? Hey, November 10th, 2008, Blagojevich Home Conference Call, session 451.
I also think that while you are actually, making basically an equivalent of a lifetime appointment for someone, I suspect if you get closer and look at the reality of it all, it may give you fewer benefits than you might think.
yeah. I mean, my sense here is you're going to get nothing. You do Obama's person, you get nothing for it. Absolutely nothing. You except maybe get some short-term good press, like one day maybe, and that's it. You get a president who's selfish and just pitches people, so you get nothing. So if you're going to do that, and you got a U.S. senator who's going to owe Obama, not me, or Daley and Obama, and not me, why not just put my own person in there? And then I'll have someone who's grateful.
Short term, you know him. I don't think any of us know him. You might get some short time benefits, but I'm not really sure what that would honestly be. I mean, it still seems to me you'd be basically making the appointment based on sort of hope that they're going to help you at some point down the line.
I know that you would with normal people, but I don't think that's the case with them.
I don't think you live your life hoping that somebody's going to help you down the line.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of baloney.
Fucking golden.
There you go.
All right. Well, that brought us right back, didn't it, Joe?
Man, I'm telling you. So first of all, just some credits are involved. So Patrick J. Riley wrote The Arrogance of Those People, and it featured Sandy Bykowski as the Fed / Fitzgerald, Paul Moulton as our pal Blago, and Tommy Spears as Mr. Schofield. And so, yeah, that was actually the first live thing we've done in about a year anyway. And this is, I'm taking a little indulgence to let people know that if you saw that very last slide with the blue background, that is the logo for a podcast that DB Comedy is now producing and is now live, we're happy to say, beginning today. It is called DB Comedy Presents The Electables. It's based on our 2017 season where we went through all the presidents. And so each podcast will be a combination of sketch comedy and presidential history for people who can't afford Hamilton. It has some fun discussion with the writers and a couple of historians. And so episode 1, George Washington, appropriately, is now available. We are live on Spotify. We are live on Stitcher. We are live on TuneIn. And hopefully by this time tomorrow, we'll be live on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts as well. If you go to dbcomedy.com, we've got some links. And we'll be releasing a new president every other Tuesday, so John Adams will be next, but I like Washington because, well, I'm Washington in most of the sketches, so there we go.
Love it.
And as EJ is saying, if you can't afford Hamilton, you can also donate $100 to NDFA, and then he'll throw in a Disney Plus subscription so you can watch Hamilton as all the time. Thank you, EJ.
Thank you. So I have to admit, Joe, when I first got the run of show for tonight, and you had mentioned that you were going to ask me to do some offbeat, unconventional performances for a political event. And then I saw DB Comedy. So I assumed that DB was my initials. And I thought, this will definitely be the end of Northside DFA. It will have been an incredible run of 15 years, terminated by having me do some kind of stand-up comedy during your fundraiser. So I'm glad that you meant something much different, much funnier, much smarter by DB Comedy. But just tell us a bit about the history of the group and what you guys are working on now besides the podcast.
Well, like I said, we started as, it was called Democracy Burlesque, and the tagline was Only the Politics Are Naked. And we did shows, we would write shows based on themes. So we started in 2006. So we had our Bush show, our Cheney show, our Rove show, our Condi show. And eventually we started to do shows about, again, very specific themed shows like on labor, like on healthcare, like on, we would do election shows. And then actually 10 years ago, we started to branch off when we did we kind of settled in at Mary's Attic. We did a show about food and politics and how is food political, and that opened up a whole area. We stopped producing live at about 2018, and that's when we came up with the idea of doing the podcast. And the original idea was to learn how to do a podcast so we'd eventually do some stuff that's slightly more topical. And in fact, we are, because besides the presidents, we do have an episode coming up on presidents and pandemics, which has its own crazy history with Woodrow Wilson and Gerald Ford, and even going back as John Adams, who was actually the first president to have what we would call a vaccine.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and especially in the world of COVID, that is kind of a good way to keep doing political work. And then, like I said, that kind of paralleled my involvement with NDFA, because as a playwright, I was involved. I knew a lot of folks at Stage Left Theater, which included Sandra Ruthine, which included Melissa Lindbergh, which included our dear missing, we miss her every day, Kat Dean, and a few other folks. And we discovered independently that we had all been at a Howard Dean rally in 2003 on Navy Pier.
Oh.
And that kind of brought that sort of brought me involved. I was also at Wing Ho and migrated to Fizz, migrated to Kalo, which is where we started to hear about the returns in 2008 in Iowa. And also involving all the different, and it was, for me, it's fun because it's all about nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
NDFA is about how do you win, how do you knock on doors, who do you decide to do, and all the friendships and good people that we're involved with. And that's how I've been on steering for all this time as well. And even going so far as I did meet Howard Dean and told him how he inspired both Democracy Burlesque and being involved with NDFA. So it all kind of closes together. So that's a very brief and long-winded, brief yet long-winded history of DB and NDFA.
That's awesome. And you said a word or two about your time on the steering committee of NDFA as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you wanted to say more about that, but if so, the floor is yours. If not, I think we have some other testimonials from steering committee members.
Why don't we just go to those?
All right.
Jerome. We need sound.
I got to know NDFA. Hi, I'm EJ Saraki, and I've been on the steering committee for about a year now. I got to know NDFA at the same time that I got to know several of the other similar groups across Chicago, and that was through my wife Katie's campaign for alderman. It was really interesting to see groups from that perspective because I wasn't going to the meetings as somebody who was looking to join a group. I was going to the meetings through a different lens. And I got to see how many different people treated the candidates differently, asked questions in sometimes thoughtful ways and sometimes not thoughtful ways. And I was really struck by how much the people at NDFA cared about the things that they said they cared about and were willing to bring people along to drive the progress that they thought was important. And that really stuck with me. And so after the campaign, I kept coming to the meetings and I kept seeing that sort of passion and that commitment to making things better, to making a better democracy. And that's why I'm here today, and that's why I keep working for NDFA.
Hi, I'm Ray Sanders. I started in politics working with the 39th and 45th Ward progressive organizations. I learned about NDFA by being involved in numerous campaigns and having people inform me about the enlightened, fun monthly meetings. After going to many NDFA gatherings, I was fortunate enough to be offered a board seat. My skills from 30 plus years of working on local government budgets are a good complement to this talented group of people. Joining NDFA and being on the board has been rewarding because I was so lucky to find a group of people that we all share the same values. Our local government processes need so much improvement and honesty. I have been disappointed to see that in our city government, too many leaders are more interested in loyalty and campaign benefits than managing quality services to the normal voter. I'm hoping that being involved in this organization, we can instill progressive policies that help improve the lives of the regular person. Here are some parting thoughts. For evil to triumph, it is only necessary for good people to do nothing. Now is the time to ditch Moscow Mitch and the Trump crime family. Who do we want making decisions for our lives? Self-interested robber baron billionaires or a government that we can hold accountable through fair elections? And finally, democratic socialism is a form of government in which state regulations without state ownership ensures economic growth and a fair distribution of income. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Stitch Marcus, and I'm Northside DFA's treasurer. I've been a member for about 10 years. I joined up as soon as I moved into the city after I retired. It is such a joy to be part of a group where all the members have such an enthusiasm for good progressive governance. And it's also a wonderful thing to work on campaigns where you know you're making a difference where you live. My first campaign was for the alderman, the ward that I live, and to say that I can knock doors and make phone calls and somebody won and I can see the difference is amazing. The thing that I hope for most for DFA is that more people will harness that enthusiasm, join up with us, and realize that you can make a difference in everyone's life.
Hi, my name is Kevin Allen, and I'm a member of the steering committee. I first got started with NDFA back in 2008. Actually, the very first meeting I ever went to was right after the general election. We were still upstairs at Fizz at the time. And one of the things that immediately struck me about NDFA is the fact that it wasn't just another progressive organization in the city, but that it was uniquely focused on campaigns and candidates, getting people elected, getting the right person into the right job for the right reasons. And one of the other things that struck me about the organization was the unique small d democratic community that it had. It was really member driven. It was everybody's voice was not only heard but encouraged to be heard, and that you had this broad spectrum of differences of opinion where people could come together and sometimes passionately fight out, what we believed in and who we wanted to work for, and then still be able to peel off afterwards and all go get a drink together. And the family feeling, the community feeling, is what I think really sets NDFA apart. That and its impactful focus on candidates and campaigns, and getting our membership, which is extremely valuable, behind candidates in a way that really can push their campaigns forward.
All right. So, yep. Thank you all. And of course, we're also shout out Mac McWinney and Sophia Ozabal, who weren't able to get videos, but they're also members of NDFA steering. And someday when we have an in-person meeting again, there will be elections for new steering committee members. So if anybody's listening and you are a member, which back in the day used to be 3 meetings and 3 volunteer events, let us know and we'll see what we can do. We've got a few more things we want to try to get sold or try to get some more bids on before we get to our main event. So Jerome, again, if we can back on to our next round of items on our NDFA silent auction. And here we have, again, courtesy of some merchants at in Rogers Park and some of our members from Rogers Park, 2 Rogers Park gift baskets. It has a combination of wines, cheeses. I believe they've got pizzas, gift certificates from a couple different restaurants. Again, all helping local merchants to get through COVID as well, but also helping us as well. There are 2 of them. One is the current bid at $70, the other at $60. Again, northsidedfa.com slot auction. I know we get complaints because of who owns them, but we are a Northside NDFA, so we are generally Cubs fans. So we actually have 3 different ticket packages that are currently bidding for. One is and all of which are upper deck outfield seats on the third baseline. This is obviously for the 2021 season as well. First is general marquee package. There's just 2 tickets, $100 bid, a series of games. Now the second one, and this is a $200 bid because same seats, Cubs, White Sox. One of the Crosstown Classic games. Again, those have been that's actually pretty intense competition for those. So that's the Crosstown package, and the final is what we call a diamond package. Basically includes parking. Same set of tickets, but parking, which of course are, to coin a phrase that we've heard before, effing golden. Also a $200 bid for those. And if you're not a Cubs fan, okay, you may be a Blackhawks fan. I understand they lost in overtime tonight, but this is bonus hockey in August and playoff hockey. So they're an up-and-coming team. So we've got 2 seats for, again, 2021-2022 season, 300 level seats. They'll have your choice of 10 different games, one of which you can go to. $150 bid for those tickets. And the last item in this tranche, and this is really cool, because these are already collector's items for those of you who are comic book nerds. It is a set of 4 comic books, all featuring Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But as you can see, this particular comic book also features four formative members of the squad. We understand there have been 2 primary victories, and the squad is going to grow by at least 2 coming into the 2021 congressional season. So you are bidding on 4 collector's item comic books, $100 bid for all 4. We'll stop there because we want to tease the final bunch. And honestly, I've been talking a lot.
I mean, you're doing a great job. I'm ready to bid. I don't know. We just Ilhan Omar won her primary the day before yesterday. What better way to celebrate than to bid that comic book way up?
Absolutely.
You know, it's timely. It's stylish. It fits in your quarantine, hoarding house, and you'll be able to pass it on to your grandchildren.
Absolutely. But that does bring us to the kind of what is the main event of the evening.
Yeah, I think we're ready.
And so why don't you introduce it, Dan, because you were involved with it.
So one of the benefits of doing an event by Zoom is you can even have people with scheduling conflicts participate. So earlier today, Sophia Olazaba and I had the pleasure of interviewing Jill Wine-Banks. Jill is a person with a national profile that lives right here in Illinois, in fact, in Evanston, just north of the north side of Chicago. And, she was legal counsel as a young, super talented lawyer during the Nixon impeachment, and then has proceeded to have a very distinguished career. She's now a frequent MSNBC commentator. She's on the Stephanie Miller Show all the time. She recently wrote a book, which is about her work pushing a criminal president out of office. It's work that, as you'll hear her describe, is something she's been working on for a long time, but feels especially timely given who lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And, she's just someone who's seen a lot, done a lot, has a lot of insight, and had a lot to say. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this interview. Well, our next guest is a resident of my hometown of Evanston, someone who has been a prominent participant in not only supporting Democratic candidates, but also supporting the rule of law when presidents get out of control for a number of decades now, and not to mention a prominent media commentator, Jill Wine-Banks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here.
Well, first, I want to talk about your recent book. It's called Watergate Girl, My Fight for Truth and Justice Against a Criminal President. I would imagine that it's not a coincidence that you chose to write and publish a book like this when we have another criminal president in office. And I'm curious if you could tell us a bit about the book, about your experiences as a young but prominent legal counsel during the Watergate case, and what you think we can learn from it now.
Oh, man, that could take us an hour, but I will try to summarize it. The Watergate Girl, actually, I started writing in 2008, but its relevance became very clear around 2017 Inauguration Day. And I don't mention Donald Trump in the book until the epilogue, but I believe that everyone who's hearing my voice right now will see the parallels in reading the main part of the book immediately, because they're very obvious. And that's clearly why Holt wanted to publish the book, was because of the parallels to today. I think in terms of what we can learn, well, my book reflects a time when democracy and justice prevailed. We're not there yet, but November 3rd, we have the opportunity to bring back rule of law again. We need to get rid of Donald Trump and William Barr to ensure our future democracy. That's the first thing we learned, is that democracy can work and that truth matters. Back in the Watergate era, we had 3 media sources, NBC, ABC, and CBS, and they all had the same facts. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as you're reading social media and listening to all the various sources that you can get news from now. Use your critical thinking skills and pay attention to what's really true. So when I do commentary on MSNBC, I don't just take the word of someone else. I read the source documents. If the newspapers report that so-and-so was indicted for X crime, I don't take their word for it. I read the indictment so that when I talk about it, I know that I'm conveying the truth. And that's really important. We have a great opportunity to bring back decency and truth to government, and it's going to take getting out the vote. We also learned even during Watergate the power of the public. It was indeed the public that protested so loudly that Nixon, who was stonewalling, giving us the tapes, and who had fired the special prosecutor, was forced to hire a second special prosecutor and to turn over the tapes, which ultimately, of course, led to his ouster from office. But it was also a time of bipartisanship. It was the Republicans who went to him right after the smoking gun tape was obtained by us and made public. They went to him and said, we've seen the evidence, it's overwhelming. You will be convicted on all of the counts of impeachment that you have been charged with. You will be convicted in the Senate unless you resign. And he announced his resignation the next day and was gone the day after that. So it was public pressure that made everybody in Congress, in a time of bipartisanship, actually get together and lead to this outcome. We can't even get a package of relief for COVID right now. Congress has adjourned and we don't have a package because McConnell wouldn't let it go forward. It was never voted on by the Senate. We're in a pretty terrible state of affairs right now.
Well, let me follow up on this. And this is, I'm afraid, both a pessimistic question and a difficult question. And I want to preface this by saying I could not agree more about the importance of this election, and not only on a question of policy, but just on a question of the integrity of our democracy. We have to defeat him and repudiate him on November 3rd. That said, as you say, there was ultimately bipartisan agreement that Nixon had crossed a line. He was not even impeached, if I remember correctly.
No, he was. Well, there wasn't a vote. There were articles of impeachment voted by the committee. It never actually needed a vote in the House because he resigned before that happened.
Right. There would have been a bipartisan vote in both the House and the Senate to remove had he stuck around. Instead, he resigned in disgrace, and his role in the history books primarily is as the president who resigned in disgrace because of his lawless acts. Donald Trump was impeached on a party line vote. He was not removed from office, and in doing so, the Senate Republicans were, with one exception, unanimous. He is pretty unpopular, but a good 35 to 40%, sometimes even in the low 40s of the public are standing with him. It seems like the best we could do is a harsh repudiation on November 3rd that will leave us with a divided country and still two different narratives of what even happened. My question for you is specific. What are the risks to our democracy? What things will be difficult to repair given that that's the way we will wind up removing Trump from office? And in light of that, what should we be doing to make the best of the situation?
So you are correct in everything you said, and it is a depressing, almost disillusioning question because it is correctly stating the facts. Nixon won re-election, even though the conviction had already, the burglars hadn't been convicted yet, but the evidence was very clear to me that there was a connection to the White House and the committee to re-elect the president before the election. And nonetheless, he won 49 out of 50 states. So people even then didn't care. Now, I will point out that Nixon did a lot of good. He opened China. He created the EPA. He passed Title IX. I cannot point to anything that Donald Trump has done that I would put in a category of, wow, that was a good thing he did. So Nixon was certainly immoral and certainly corrupt and was part of a very bad conspiracy of crime in the White House. But he also understood the rule of law, which Trump does not. What can we hope for? Well, Nixon also had a Southern strategy which divided the country. He did sort of play a race card in the same way that when Donald Trump says, women of the suburbs, the Democrats are going to ruin your suburbs. That's a clear, horrible racist trope that he is putting forward. And so did Nixon. And yet we not only overcame it, we prevailed and we've moved on to a better place. We haven't moved on to regaining bipartisanship. That's one of the things that I hope, and I think, people may criticize Biden for his willingness to work with the Republicans, but I applaud it, because otherwise you have the gridlock of the last 8 years before Donald Trump. You need to be able to get some sort of bipartisan agreement, and that means compromise. The COVID relief bill, the Democrats started out at double what the Republicans, almost actually quadruple what they were asking. Now they've come down to just 2 million. They've compromised, but the Republicans haven't. So we do need some cooperation in Congress. So my advice is get out the vote for Biden and Harris, but get out the vote for the entire ballot. We need to take back the Senate. We need to keep the House. That's how democratic values, which I believe are the right values, they're the values that I was certainly raised to believe in, will prevail. And the only thing I can hope for is that people will pay attention to alternatives. Sorry about that, guys. This is what's working at home means.
Nothing to be sorry about.
Yeah. Wait till he jumps on my lap and starts licking my face. Then you'll have a real scene.
Moment.
Yeah, but I do think there is hope that we can work together to bring about the kind of change that will lead back to the rule of law. I think the Department of Justice has been hurt very, very badly. And whoever becomes the Attorney General is going to have a major hurdle. But I think there's enough career employees who didn't quit. I mean, some have left because of what's going on. But ultimately, I started out in the Department of Justice as just a line prosecutor. And I know that I was trained at that time to believe that the only outcome that mattered was truth and fairness. We worked for justice and truth. And that's not what's happening now. Now it's political favors for all the people that the president likes, like Flynn, for example. I'm actually a plaintiff with other Watergate colleagues trying to be an amicus if the case goes forward before Judge Sullivan, which, based on the argument that we heard, I've lost track, was it yesterday or the day before, I think there's a good chance that the en banc court will allow Judge Sullivan to make a reasoned decision, to have a hearing and to decide whether or not to dismiss the case, that the rule for dismissal says with leave of court, and that means that the court actually has an opportunity to exercise discretion, to listen to evidence, and to assess whether there is some justification for the dismissal or whether it's being done for corrupt purposes, which seems clearly the case here.
I feel like I've been monopolizing. Sophia, do you have questions you wanted to ask?
Yes. You mentioned Joe Biden and a little bit about why you're supporting. Can you, being that I also ran for delegate, didn't get selected, but it's always been a dream of mine to attend the DNC since I was a child watching TV. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you're hoping to see this year at the DNC, what your expectations are, and then also what you hope to see from a Joe Biden presidency, like why you selected him?
So I share with you, I'm very disappointed not to be there in person. I am thrilled. This is the first time I've ever been on a ballot. And I got the most votes of anybody in my district. So I was really thrilled. It only proves the power of television because clearly name recognition mattered. And I'm delighted. And I've linked up with the youngest delegate, Victor Shi, who was elected as a Biden delegate from a different congressional district. And we now do an intergenerational politics podcast because we think that the issues go for all generations. And we're trying to bring the perspective of, he was 17 when he was elected. He has now turned 18. So the 18-year-old and the much more older than that year-old, me, I can remember being at the 1976 convention in New York. And so that shows you how old I was. I was actually the consul to Lindy Boggs, who was the chair of the convention that year. And I think, obviously we aren't going to have the hoopla and the balloons, but we will have legitimate speakers, people conveying to us what the values, what the platform for the Democratic Party is. And we'll get to see, of course, the acceptance speeches of Biden and Harris. We will see President Obama and Michelle Obama speak. There will be a full array of exciting things every night, which will be televised, so everyone can watch it. As delegates, we will have the opportunity to participate in caucuses and consuls and the Illinois delegation meetings through Zoom. And, you know, we've all gotten so that I actually feel like I'm talking to you guys. And at first it seemed very artificial, but now, okay, so we're not in the room together, but we can have a dialogue and we can understand each other, and I can see your facial reactions. I know my book tour got sort of aborted because of COVID. It came out on February 25th, and you can imagine what happened immediately. I love being in the room when I'm talking about the book, because then I can see whether I'm answering people's real questions. I can tell from their faces, are you listening to me? Am I being interesting, or should I change the subject? And it's a little harder over Zoom to do that, but you know, sometimes you can even do that. And so we'll all be able to participate. I'm going to have balloons that I'll have in my house, and the Illinois Democratic Party is sending us, I believe, banners and things that I can wave at the camera of my Zoom camera. And so, you know, I'll have some excitement here. It won't be the same as being there. In terms of the presidency, I expect a return to norms, normalcy, to the rule of law. I think we'll return to decency. I don't expect nicknames, and I think we will hopefully not see what I see as all the racist and misogynist tropes. You know, going back to my book, I didn't realize until I was writing the book how much sexism had affected my life. When I became a lawyer, only 4% of all lawyers were women, and none of them were in trial rooms. So I was always the only woman in the courtroom. And I was subjected to all the things that we're seeing now. There was just an article in the New York Times about Black female doctors and how there's told, oh, the garbage is over there, as if they were maintenance instead of doctors. I'd walk into a courtroom and the clerk would say, whose secretary are you? And statistically, you know, that was more likely than that I was actually the representative of the United States of America. But this is 2020. We shouldn't be having those assumptions anymore. Half of the legal profession is now female. And I don't expect to be treated that way. I don't expect to hear the vice president to be, Kamala Harris, called a nasty woman. I don't expect to hear her being called angry. And that's what Donald Trump is saying. That is so low and so despicable. We have to have her back. We have to call out the press and any politician who engages in that kind of conduct. And I expect that this Biden-Harris administration will have none of that, and that we will be back to the kind of decency. I expect that we will have a much more organized national response to COVID, that we will have a national mask wearing, that we will stop all the ridiculous, huge events that are unnecessary and that endanger everyone who is there, that we won't have orders. You can't have school funding unless you open your school in person, when thousands of students are being exposed and have come tested positive. This is not a good and healthy thing. And we need the wisdom. Today you heard Joe Biden and Kamala being briefed by the medical team that he has assembled, who's been advising him throughout the pandemic. And today was their first public appearance. And he's going to pay attention to science. That's something that's really important in terms of the environment, in terms of our own health. I think that we will see an expansion of Obamacare, instead of the president saying on one side, oh, I'll protect you from pre-existing conditions, while he is sending people to court to overturn the entire ACA. So I think there's just so many wonderful things. And of course, we will have the first female vice president. We will have the first African-American woman, the first South Asian woman. I mean, these are all very exciting. The response to the announcement and to the speeches was very exciting to me. I felt an enthusiasm for the ticket. I felt that enthusiasm. I was an early Biden supporter because I always believed that he was the right person to bring the country together, to bridge, Dan said in the very beginning, we're a very divided country. And if you listen to Fox News, you have one set of facts that are actually not facts. You have one set of information that is based on totally made up information. You have the Kellyanne Conway alternative facts, which are lies. And one of my pins actually says alternative facts are lies. And today's pin is a Joe Biden delegate pin. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be a great administration where we can move back to a world leadership role where we will be respected instead of pitied. On my Twitter feed, I have a lot of followers in Canada who are so sympathetic to us, but they feel sorry for us, as do all Europeans. And if you look at the countries that we used to be friends with, we don't have any friends anymore. And the friends of the president are authoritarian dictators. And he wants to be an authoritarian dictator. And if we don't stop him on the post office, that will be a problem. And maybe Dan can talk about whether Illinois is going to have, in addition to being able to mail in your mail ballot, and I suggest everyone apply for one right now. It's easy to do online. I've done it, and hopefully we'll get mine soon. But will there also be locked boxes where I don't have to go into the polling place, but a secure place where I can deposit my ballot so I don't have to pay I will pay the 55 cents, but many people, it's like a poll tax. We should not be allowing anyone to have to pay money to vote. And that means the government, when the state mails out my ballot, they should be paying 20 cents as has been traditional under bulk rate. They should not be able to allow the administration, the Trump administration, to charge 55 cents to mail it out, because that almost triples the cost to the state. And they're not giving any money to the state from the federal government, and the state can't print money. So how are they going to pay that 55 cents? And they can't certainly pay $1.10, which would be including a return envelope. So I think there has to be a way to drop off your ballot. Dan's shaking his head. Yes?
Yeah, there will be. It's interesting. I actually was, one thing I have been really disappointed by the Democrats in Springfield was the voting expansion bill they passed this spring, which was far weaker than most strongly Democratic states have been doing. But it had a lot of good things in it nonetheless, one of which was the ability to drop off ballots, which is critical.
Excellent.
So there's an expansion of mail voting, which is good, though not as far as it needed to go. And then steps like making Election Day a holiday and drop off options that I think will be critical as the pandemic might unfortunately be in a scary moment as we hit late October.
Yes, I will not give up my right to vote, whatever it takes. If I have to wrap myself in a plastic bag and go in, I brought for the primary, I did vote in person because it was the first time I was on a ballot and I wanted to actually do it. But I brought my own pen so I didn't have to sign the register with someone else's pen. I brought rubber gloves so that when I touched the screen, and then I threw them away right after voting. So I took every precaution I could, but I think we shouldn't be endangering people. And Illinois is doing a great job. People, I do see most people wearing masks. And I feel like we're doing a great job. Governor Pritzker has really been a great leader. Mayor Lightfoot has done a great job. And I hope that we continue not to get bored with this, which is something that happens. And I don't know. One thing I just thought of, which I didn't mention in terms of the book, aside from the fact that it is a tale of getting a corrupt president that resonates to what's going on now, it's also a very personal story. It includes a lot of evidence of the sexism that I encountered and how I dealt with it, not as a how-to, but because I am someone who loves reading memoirs to learn how other people who've succeeded did it. And I'm hoping that a lot of the young people who read it will realize, it took me a year, for example, to realize that I was being discriminated against and that the men I started with were trying cases and I was still doing appellate work. And when I approached the boss and said, how come? He said, well, you're a girl and you're more vulnerable. In appellate work, you're only dealing with lawyers, but if you're in the trial court, you'd be with made members of the mob, because I was in organized crime. And hence you can see why my book is called The Watergate Girl. It's because back then we were called girls. And while we might be called women now, we're often treated the same way. And I also think I saw things a little differently than my male colleagues, that I had a perspective of the people involved and the relationships between maybe John Dean and Mo, his wife, and between Jeb Magruder and his wife Gail, or John Mitchell and Martha Mitchell, who are, Martha Mitchell is one of the great characters of the Nixon administration. And I also talk a lot about the personal struggles that I had, both in terms of being a shy girl who wasn't going to let shyness stop me from what I wanted to do, but also as someone who accepted a lot of the stereotypes of the era, which was I was in a horrible marriage, but I felt like marriage is forever, I have to stay. And besides, it's my responsibility to fix the problems in the marriage. And of course, I learned that's so not true. And I was urged by many of my Watergate colleagues not to share that. And I felt that it was an important part of the story because it was a part of my life. And because I hope other people who I believe, I'm by far not the only person who has gone through this or is going through it right now, that people need to see there's a way out. And so I share a lot of that, as well as the story of my Perry Mason moment in court, a phrase that I wouldn't use anymore because who knows Perry Mason the way I know Perry Mason. But now there's a new Perry Mason TV series, so maybe people will know. And he's now not an investigator, he's moved on to become a lawyer. But Perry Mason used to trap people on the witness stand every single time. He would get them to say, yes, I did it, it wasn't your client. And that never happens in real life, except it happened to me when I was questioning Rosemary Woods, President Nixon's secretary, about the gap that she claimed to have created in one of the key tapes from the White House.
Well, that is perhaps the best possible note to end on. Thank you so much, Jill. This has been fascinating. I've learned a lot. I imagine the audience has too. Thank you for the activism. Good luck. Enjoy the convention. And,
thank you.
Bring home a big victory on November 3rd.
Yes, everybody vote. Everybody vote all the way down the line. Make sure that candidates, particularly some of the ones in flippable districts, you get out the vote. Not just yourself. Make sure your neighbors vote, your friends, your family. Everyone has to vote. This is not a time to say, oh, he's not perfect. Okay, no one's perfect. But Joe Biden is, I think he's perfect. But if you don't, he's certainly better than the alternative. And one of the two is going to be president of the United States, inaugurated in January next year. Make sure it's Joe Biden.
Yeah, someone who, Joe Biden was not on my top 10 choices in the nomination. I would happily walk across hot coals to vote for him in November.
Well, he was my number one choice and he still is.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Hello. Oh, okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you again, Jill Winebanks, for the chat. And we're sitting here kind of doing a little bit of organizing because that interview went a little long. And so we're going to do a little bit of an audible. We actually had two other videos from Marie Newman and Deb Shore that were talking about what NDFA did with them, and we thank them for that. And what we'll do is we'll hold those videos. We are hoping to create a YouTube video. Yeah, we can use them. Yeah, first of all, we can show them in our September meeting, but we're also in the process of creating a YouTube channel now that we have getting a catalog and a library of meetings and such. So you will all get to see those. And Dan is off because we do have a finale that we've got planned. But before we do that, let's very quickly go through the rest of the items that are still on sale. They're actually still for bidding. And they're actually not all just bids, by the way. There are 3 items that are premiums, meaning if you donate this amount of money, you will get what you see on the screen. Again, at northsidedfa.com/audition details. Here's one of those premiums, a local brewery package. We have a lot of steering committee members that know their way about craft beer. So what you have is a variety of different craft beers and a couple little tchotchkes from various brewers and craft beer companies in the area. So a $250 premium gets you that beer package. But for $500, you not only get craft beers, you will get craft coffees. We're also blessed to have all kinds of coffee brewers and coffee roasters in the area. So a $500 premium gets you a beer and coffee combination, probably including many of the companies whose logos you see on the screen before you. Don't like beer? No worries. We have a $150 premium where you can get those coffee beans as well. So again, those 3 items, as well as the masks, are premiums. 100 and above, you can get your choice of any of those items. But if you've got some competitive juices flowing, we still have, in addition to all the items that you saw before, a few other items, such as this handmade Thai crafted jewelry for the lady in your life, or we're not judgmental here at NDFA. This is a $100 bid currently for a choker, a pendant, and a ring. A set of 6 socks. This has actually been a very fiercely bid upon item. As you can see, various icons from Nancy Pelosi to RBG to Elizabeth Warren. It is currently at $60. And again, there's been a lot of competition for those. So get your bids in now. So one of our steering committee members works for the National Restaurant Association, and he got these amazing items from the Tabasco company. So if you are into hot sauce, you have as wide a variety of Tabasco sauces as you can, along with various Tabasco items. For a $70 bid, Tabasco is yours. This has been bid upon, I know, while we've been working during the meeting. A Napoli date night. So it includes items to allow you to make your own pizza, including wine, a class in pizza making, because it's wine, it involves 21 and over, but it's a $110 bill for a date night, and apparently that can happen virtually as well. More Cubs items. This is, well, look, they won 5 years ago, in case you forgot. So a lot of items to memorialize that earth-shattering piece of joy for a $125 bid. Now, I mentioned the Tabasco sauce, and this is also something they donated for $100. Yes, that is a premium $100 bottle of Tabasco sauce. It's like the Cristal of Tabasco sauces. Champagne of hot sauces. For $100, it's yours. And finally, a simple little grab bag of simple little political games for children of all ages. We've got dress-up dolls, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, the Hillary Clinton Nutcracker. Yeah, we know, but they're fun, they're goofy. It's a $30 bid, from the sublime to the ridiculous. Again, bidding continues until midnight at northsidedfa.com. Please bid. And we're almost done, but we've got one more item. And can we go to Dan's camera now?
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right. So I was asked to do what has become sort of like my signature gimmick of juggling flaming torches in a kind of not totally clearly explained effort to connect vaudeville to political activity. And because NDFA asked, and I love you so much, I said yes. And so I'm here in my backyard, and I'm going to set some stuff on fire and juggle it. While I do that, you will be bidding on these various auction items. You'll be donating to NDFA. You will be investing in a progressive America. And I will be, humiliating myself like some sort of circus clown on screen. So hold on 1 second. Hey, Peter, can you come in? Can you be my camera person?
What? What do you want?
I just want you to make sure that I'm on screen.
Yay.
Sorry. The hard part of this, interestingly, is always lighting the match. Nobody believes, but is actually true. So just a bit of patience.
Whoa.
Cool.
Peter, if you take these far away, honey, please. All right.
Try to do a little drum roll here.
We are on camera now, is that correct, Joe?
We are.
All right, here we go. And I think we're about ready to end the evening. So all I can say is, if this is not enough to get you all to donate to NDFA, it's all I have. It's all I know how to do. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this evening. Thank you, NDFA, for being amazing. Thanks for being a part of a progressive movement that's building a better Chicago, a better Illinois, and a better America for all of us.
Watch your house.
We're done like that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Keep bidding till midnight.